Hi, today I'm going to be taking a look at the Erica Synths Black Wavetable VCO. If you've seen any of my recent modular videos, you'll have seen me playing with this and creating some really thick and juicy tones. It's on my 5 steps to modular video, and it appeared on the video I made showing how to make a really basic patch with a really basic modular setup. And I've also used it on my ClubbingTV Modular Synths 101 episode. I'm not sure if that's been broadcast yet or if it's on our From the Studio playlist on the ClubbingTV official YouTube channel, but when it has, I'll put a link in the description and maybe put a link up here somewhere as well. But for now, just going to go through at the very start of this a really quick overview before we get into the details of it. So don't worry if none of this makes any sense, because it'll all make sense hopefully as you go through the video. It's a wavetable oscillator with 16 wavetables, each containing 16 tones, so that's 256 in total, and it can interpolate between each of the wave shapes so you can get smooth transitions from one wave shape to the next. It's also got a sub that's got 3 settings, an octave below, 2 octaves below, and the third, so the switch at the bottom, that's a transistor based sub, so it's absolutely as fat as you like. It's also got a built-in VCA. It's got a Bitcrusher, there's a dedicated knob for the Bitcrusher, and you can modulate between the wave shapes with the CV input, the wave CV input, and you can determine the amount that modulates it using this knob here. And the second CV in we've got here can be used for FM, it can be used to modulate the amplitude, the Bitcrusher amount, or swap between the different wavetables, not to be confused with actually switching between the wave shapes. And it's also expandable. You can buy pretty cheap add-on chips. I think they're around €25 that simply plug into the back of the unit and add extra wavetables. Anyway, I've been playing with this for a couple of months now, and I can't quite believe how many tones and how flexible a single oscillator is. I got this because it's digital, so it's different to most of the synths in the studio. You can see a few of the analog ones behind me. I do have a Microwave XT and an Access Virus TI, and they've got wavetables, but I don't dig into them enough, even though they sound really good, especially the Microwave XT. Just all the menu diving doesn't really want me to sort of jump in hands-on, whereas with this, it's just all so immediate. So I'm absolutely convinced this was the right decision for me to get as my first Eurorack oscillator. I've really enjoyed playing with it. It's got the subs, and on the wavetables you've got intervals, so you can get things that sound like chords coming out of this. It's amazing, and I'll go through all that in a minute. And it's so much more flexible than I realised at first. For example, it's got a built-in VCA, plus some of the wavetables act a little bit like a filter as you sweep through them, so in some patches you won't need a VCA or you won't need a filter, just by sort of judicious and intelligent use of the second CV in. So I'll go into all that later, but first let's go back to the very basics and I'll explain exactly what a wavetable is. And if you know what that is, jump to the next section. A wavetable is effectively a single cycle sample of a sound, and that's a lot of S's in one sentence. But basically, if you take a tone, take a sample, and you reduce it down to a single cycle, you've got the fundamental building block of that tone, the DNA of it almost, as it were. So an organ will have a different wave shape than someone saying ah, and they will all look completely different than a standard sine, saw, or square that you're going to get on an analog, standard analog oscillator. And then of course you can modulate that over time with envelopes and LFOs. All sounds a little bit complicated, but it really isn't. It's just like using a standard analog oscillator. And why is that important? Well, the wave shapes you get from these are so much more complex than standard analog saw, sine, square, or triangle, and they've got so much more interesting harmonic content that you'd need an awful lot of different modules like saturators and filters and different oscillators as well to get the same or similar tones, and it'd be really, really difficult to do that on standard analog oscillators, if not impossible. But it can give you patches that sound like you've spent an awful lot more. And if you saw my modular synth patching video, you'll hear that I was so amazed by the sounds I was getting from a single oscillator, a filter, envelope generator, and amplifier, and that was it. And I was absolutely flabbergasted, to be honest, because it sounded so rich and fat and full. Let's just listen to a couple to show you what I mean, and I'll just modulate through all the different wave shapes within the wavetable. And you can hear there that they're not 16 completely random different wave shapes. They actually all relate to each other. So when I modulate through the wavetable, it sounds a bit like I'm playing a filter, doesn't it? And there's another one here called acid. And that one sounds like a sawtooth going through a resonant filter with some overdrive, or overdriven through the filter or something. Really nice. And obviously you can modulate all of that using envelopes or LFOs, and I'll do that later on. So just to reiterate, a wavetable isn't a random selection of unrelated wave shapes. They're all related, and they can massively reduce the amount of modules you need to get that sort of flexibility in the tones. And sometimes it's the only way of doing that. So I'm thinking of plugins like Serum or Massive X that really do rely on the wavetables to get those sort of harsh and brittle bass sounds. And that's where the interpolation between the wave shapes that you get here, a smooth transition from one shape to another, really sort of shines. Other modules that can play wavetables, for example, Distings Mark IV can play wavetables, but it can't modulate, or interpolate between those points, so you get distinct waves. This is much more flexible from that perspective. And at the end of this video, I'll put some demo patches I've created that demonstrate just that. LFOs and envelopes moving through the wavetable to give really distinct tones that you just couldn't get from standard analog architecture. So let's just run through a couple of them quickly. We start off on wavetable 0. Start off with a sine. If you've got a sine, you've got yourself kicks and all sorts of different things, haven't you? And that moves to a triangle. And that moves through to a sawtooth. And then through to a square. And then different pulse widths. So we've got and then some mixtures between them. But if you look at that, that's not something you're going to get from a standard oscillator. So on the first of these wavetables, you've got all the standard analog wave shapes plus mixes between them, so it's instantly sort of sounding really flexible and powerful. And the next one's saws and squares and octaves in there as well, so something that you definitely couldn't do on a single oscillator. Then the next one's called FM. Get those sort of FM ringing bell type tones. Although you do have an FM input on this as well, so we'll look at that later. Mega waves. And without playing through them all, this is the acid one again, which I think is really good because it does demonstrate how you can build the wavetable to sound like you're playing with a filter. Just sounds like I'm sweeping the cutoff on a filter there, doesn't it? So for that one, you definitely may not need a filter as well. And here's one that's more like FM bells. It's actually called FM bells. Really like that one. And this one's just called digital. getting more into that sort of Serum and Massive X territory. Here's a nice 4-man one. Lots of nice vowel sounds. And this one's really nice because it gives you those intervals. Definitely sounds like more than a single oscillator playing there. So you can hear there, Erica Synths have got these wavetables spot on. As you play through those wavetables, the interpolation between them really does shine. It's really flexible. And as I say, listen to the demos at the end, you'll be amazed by what you can do with this thing. All from 10U, I think this is. It does sound like you're playing lots of different modules. It doesn't sound like I'm just playing 3 or 4 modules here. And I've not even got onto the sub yet. So let's move on to the sub. So just bring the sub out and put it into the second input on this quad VCA. Sounds nice. That's the 1 octave below. Here's 2 octaves below. Let's listen to the sub on its own now. That's not your standard triangle or square, is it? I'm just double checking it is the sub there. Same wave, just 2 octaves different. And then we've got this third one, which is my favourite, the transistor-based one. Amazing, I love this. It's like a really nice, big, fat, thick, distorted square. Bring in the main oscillator. So that's just a single oscillator doing that, and it sounds like 3, doesn't it? And these are all coming out raw, they're not going through a filter or anything, straight into the quad VCA and then out. But that transistor-based sub just makes everything sound fantastic, really thick and rich. It's an amazing thing. Next up, we got the Bitcrusher, which is this knob here. You can see the wave shape stepping as you do that. Really nice effect. Does it work on the sub as well? Yeah, works on the sub as well. And this can really dirty up sounds nicely. Let's try and do something with that. I really like that and I use it all the time. I also really like putting it through a filter, and I'm using here the Erica Synths Black Multimode VCF, which is really nice as well. It's got a really nice overdrive circuit. Whoa! Fabulous. And the Bitcrusher can be modulated by this separate CV in, as I said earlier. So let's take a look at that, shall we? If we hold down bank for a couple of seconds, bank 1 light's flashing, which means it's in Bitcrusher mode. So the CV here will modulate the amount of Bitcrushing, and this will control the amount of modulation. Just playing with the LFO rate on the other 32, slightly out of shot there. Lovely. Let's try this on mode 2. Mode 2, we can see it's going through the banks. Let's just slow that down on the Mother 32. Here we go. And that's just flicking through banks 1 to 16. Sort of an interesting take on sample and hold, isn't it? Nice. Let's try that a bit faster, see what happens. So a nice effect, you can't get on many things there. Let's take a look at what mode 3 does. So there we go, FM. Let's take that delay off. Doing exactly what you'd expect. Let's try it on a different tone. Let's try it on just the sort of standard waves. Modulating the amount of FM using the VC mix on the Mother 32 there. And this knob now controls the modulation or the amount of FM as well. And now let's try mode 4. Hold, put it onto mode 4. And this is interesting now because it's a VCA, so you don't need a separate VCA. So what I'll do is I'll take out the control for the VCA. I'll put that into the CV in on this. And now we listen to the output from the main oscillator directly. So yeah, just a really handy thing. It's got its own built-in amplifier. So you can change the volume. So that's just been modulated directly by the black VC envelope generator. Here we go. CV in into the envelope generator out. We have lost our sub though, that's not coming through it. But still, really handy. Let's do what I was talking about earlier then. Let's modulate the wave with CV from an envelope so we don't have to go through the filter. Turn the amount up. And what you can't see there, slightly off camera, I've got the make noise maths and I'm just playing around with the rise and fall to change the shape of the envelope. But you'll notice that the filter's fully open, it's not doing anything. It's not being modulated by the CV. So what are my final thoughts on this? Well, I haven't got enough good things I can say about it. I've been utterly impressed by the range of tones and the flexibility, and I highly recommend it as an alternative to your sort of standard analog oscillators. And I know the market's flooded with lots of things at the minute, but Erica Synths, for me as well, you know, they're a really respected company. You know you're going to get a quality bit of kit. And I know it may seem expensive at €250, but actually the sounds you get from it sound like you've spent an awful lot more. And Erica Synths, you know, they're a really good company. And for me, you get confidence in buying from someone like that. So highly recommended. It looks great, it feels great, and can sound like so much more than the specs would have you believe. So well worth a try. And if you enjoyed that, maybe think about clicking on subscribe wherever it is. And also think about my Patreon page, where I've got over 6 hours worth of tutorials now demoing how to create patches from scratch, module by module, on standard analog architecture. So if you want to ditch your presets and you want to hone those sounds exactly to what your track requires, or start from scratch, it's a great little resource there. Well, I hope somebody somewhere enjoyed that. I've got a few demos coming up at the end of the video, so don't disappear just yet, and I'll see you next time.